Good evening and welcome to the October 7th Planning Board meeting. We can go around the room and introduce ourselves, starting with Jill, if that's all right.
I'm Jill Wiedrich. I'm the village planner.
Joseph Burkhart, Planning Board member.
Andy Martin, Planning Board member.
Yana Garansky, Planning Board Chair.
David Cruzy, Planning Board member.
Thank you. And we can start by approving the minutes from our last meeting. That was on September 5th. And, no? Am I wrong?
August 5th.
August 5th,
Yep.
sorry. And can I just make a motion? Or can I, or do we need to?
Yep, you
yeah?
can just make a motion.
Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
I can second. Everyone in favor?
But I'm going to
Aye.
ask David Cruzy to
Oh, because
abstain.
my apologies.
That's okay. So I have 301. Okay.
And then we have one case today. It is for site plan amendment to 25 Liftbridge Lane. Maybe I can get the applicant to come forward and explain the changes to the building. It looks great. I went for a visit a couple days ago, and I think the detailing turned out really nice. So if you can just walk us through what kind of changes there are and what you're proposing.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Blair Anderson. So essentially, there were a few deviations from the original plan, and that's what I'm here to discuss with you and get approval for. The first two items were basically, I would say, misunderstandings between the architect and myself. He used just some symbols that he had in his library when he was supposed to just basically show the existing windows. So the first one is 6/6 buttons. There was never any intention to rip out perfectly fine windows and put in different windows. He just put the wrong symbol on the drawing. Number two item was there's some mock windows on the west side. And in his drawing, he had sketched out 4 of them. And it turned out that we really only needed 3 and it fit the materials better. And so I made the decision just to do what fit the materials. There was no ask on my part to do 4 or 3. It was just whatever fit in the drawing when he drew it up. The third was he had labeled those as spandrel glass, and I guess that's almost like a term like a Xerox in that they use that whenever they're referring to fake windows. There's no need for some special heat transmissive opaque glass because it's just a wall, and it's just the plan was just to make it look like a window, just for aesthetics. So my plan is just to use plexiglass in those cavities that are outlined by the trim. And the fourth was the access ramp. We played around with a couple configurations using some temporary metal access ramps and found that really the best use of that space for access and to provide the most parking, we felt that a ramp in the front worked better than a ramp in the back. And so that's probably the biggest change here is changing that ramp entrance from the back of behind the building to actually in front of the building right off of the sidewalk. And then another small change was moving the bike racks from the parking lot to in front of the store, along the walkway, because the building sits back another 4 feet from TK's, so there's sort of a dead space there. That we were going to put benches, but I think bike racks would be a better use, because I see people struggling there all the time on where to park their bikes. And I thought having another set of bike racks right there would work out well. That's it. Those are the basic changes from the original plan.
Thank you. So I guess I have some questions to start with, if that's all right. Can you talk more about how you are imagining what the ramp is going to be built out of, what the material will be, and how it will look like?
Yeah. So the plan is to use pressure-treated lumber for the support structures, and then a Trex-like product for the surface. The posts would be embedded in concrete in the holes at various locations. I've got an architect who has a full set of plans that will be provided to Mark for him to take a look at and approve. But the drawing should reflect pretty much the layout and the look of the ramp. And the plan is to make it basically a standard type of deck type build with spindles and handrails that are required for the ADA access ramp.
And are you thinking of the railing being out of wood or?
Yeah, just standard wood railings. Well, actually, my two concepts on that were either to do like what I've done in other places, like a pipe. But that's more when I'm trying to get sort of an industrial feel. This is just a basic kind of ramp, so I think I'll just stay with the wood rails that are pretty standard.
Thanks. And one more question from me. In terms of this plexiglass that you were referring to, where the windows are, how are you planning to install that? Is that being
With a 2-inch trim to basically simulate the frame that we have on the windows in the front. That'd be black, and it'd be used to retain and hold the plexiglass to the wall.
Okay, so is there going to be like a gap between the plexiglass and the wall, or is that going to be sandwiched
No,
directly?
it'll be right up
like-
against the wall.
Okay.
There's no need for, I don't want a gap. It's just someplace for bugs and
Right.
other junk to collect.
Thank you. I think those were my 2 questions. Anybody else have questions before we start comments? Okay, thank you. Do we want to just go?
I did
to
just
you?
have
Sorry.
one question real quick. Just confirm the depth of the parking spaces. I know we're 9 feet wide, but I just want to confirm.
I believe they're 20, I think the standard is it 20?
The standard is 19,
19.
so they'll be 9 feet by 19.
Okay, thank you.
Is it your intent to provide like a full revised architectural set?
Complete, stamped plans.
Okay, because, I mean, there's a lot of other little changes that I see here, beyond what was listed. And, I do think it's important that that is what is permitted, built, and approved. I mean, I don't want to get into them all, but just, there's more than just the 4 that are outlined here.
Can I ask for some additional clarification on that? I believe that the applicant will be submitting stamped drawings revised stamped drawings for the accessible ramp,
Ramp.
not for anything else related to the project.
Yeah, I was just going to make that comment.
Okay.
So,
I mean, sorry.
No, go ahead, Joe.
I'm looking at it, like on the front, on your initial submission, you had 8 storefront windows. now you're down to 6. You know, so to me,
The storefront
That's-
windows are exact to plan. I'm not quite sure what you're referring to.
so unless these are supposed to be.
There's 3, 2,
See?
and then
Oh,
2
he's got 'em-
singles.
Okay, he's got them angled. So, yeah, so I guess where the corners line up, and I mean, there's more to me, you know, yeah, you see what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not saying that it's a major issue or anything. I just think that what they approve needs to be like exactly, you know, what is there. And now, I don't know if he's trying to show that at an angle. on that
Yeah,
side.
are you taking in,
I think he is.
yeah,
It's-
are you
it's the
taking into
angle-
account?
It's the two
I
angled
don't,
windows.
that's what,
Yeah,
So I had the same read on it as Joe, but he's right. It's, if you look at the photo in the back, you can see
Yeah.
where they're angled in. It's
'cause
just
the
very
the
hard to see
elevation
them.
there
Yeah.
is like, that's not the scale then.
No, I
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So, that's just where, like, to me, it's a little square, and this isn't you, this, I'm not, I know you didn't sit down and, you know, in front of a computer and make these, so, just like, doesn't that, I would think that's what Mark would want to see and need. Maybe I'm wrong. So, your intent is just to have a stamped ADA ramp then?
Correct.
Okay.
And maybe I missed this, but did you speak to the shortening of the awning on the west wall as well? And if not, could you speak to that a little bit? Is it just intended to be as it is now?
Yes.
And what was the reasoning behind that, behind reducing that?
There were a couple reasons. One is that if the awning was extended as it was proposed by the architect, it would have hit the top of the door over the second unit. So there was no way to run that straight back, and it wouldn't have covered the deck, and it would block access for where the sign is.
That's what I was wondering, if the sign played into it at
Yeah.
all, if that was a consideration. And I can see that being a concern of visibility of that sign if you extended it all the way. Okay. I just wanted a little clarity on that.
that awning that we're speaking of didn't change in terms of the length of it from what was originally approved.
There was an interim drawing that showed it all the way across, because we'd gone back and forth a couple of times with the architect
So,
on that.
so that wasn't even the most recent drawing. That was something that had changed previously. I do recall
Yep.
it being drawn straight across,
Exactly.
but that didn't change from our last one to this one.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
I
So-
thought it had.
Yeah, so if you recall that the application had been before you a couple times, what was approved were the last drawings, and so there's no change in that from what was approved.
Okay, that makes sense, because I was confused as to why it was constructed the way that it was and shown the way that it was here. And I was like, okay, was that different from what we saw? And it sounds like it wasn't. That was from an older version, so that's on me.
Do you want to go ahead and start with comments? Joe, do you want to start? And just go down the line.
Yeah, I think I would want to see a full ramp detail with materials, colors, all of that. You know, what is the railing made out of? I want to see it dimensionally. You know, I'd like to see all that. I'm not sure I get all the information that would make me content with a ramp out of what you've provided here today.
Jill, did you pass on the drawing that I sent you from the architect? I did not. Okay.
Okay, so maybe that's out there in the universe somewhere.
There was also sent a drawing that was for building code, and I did not include it for this because I determined that what was the other documentation that was provided was sufficient to show exactly where that location would be, and in terms of the construction. But I do have that, so I can most definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, as we've kind of discussed in the past, we don't necessarily do a good job of being very detail-oriented in our approval process, and I think that's kind of part of it, you know? So I'd like to see that. I'd like that to be a part of our, any condition approval. Here are the materials that we are approving. As far as the plexiglass goes, I would just bag it and leave what's there. I don't think that looks that terrible.
My idea was originally just to paint it black, just to make it,
I don't even know if I
but-
want you to really paint it, to be honest. I think it looks okay the way that it is, or, maybe it's an opportunity for something else, or like, I kind of felt like last meeting that would have been a good spot for like some signage or something if you ever wanted to do it.
well, I didn't want to complicate things. I wanted to just get the window set up, but my thought was to use it for someplace. I was actually going to potentially put it on hinges, so people could put notices and stuff behind the plexiglass and enclose it, and that could be for an announcements, lost dogs, events, announcement, that sort of thing. But again, I'd always thought of that as sort of a bulletin board area,
Yeah.
and
I would think something like that would be better than just like plexiglass and then, nothing. And there's precedence for that in the village. There's one of those, in Canelli Park here. They switch out the flyers for whatever festival. I think the partnership does that. So then on your little kind of pocket park here, guy in the parking lot, I just don't like where the bike racks are placed. I know that's your property. I just think it's gonna be hard to get people to make sure the bike doesn't block the sidewalk. I'd rather see it somewhere else.
it's a horizontal park, so it's not vertical into the building. It's identical to the way TK's or Ricky's is set up.
Okay. Yeah, I hear you. I'm just still not in love with any obstruction on the sidewalk, because you've got the light post on the other side. I feel like you're creating like kind of an alley there that, from someone who pushes a stroller quite often with people who like to see how far their wingspan is, like, I'd prefer more sidewalk space. That would be my preference. So I would like to see that, relocated just wherever it would work. It doesn't need to be really picky.
I can do nothing. I don't have a bike I have to lock up, so I was just trying to help out the community.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Just to speak, while we're talking about the bike racks, I do agree with Joe. I think that even with them being parallel to the building and intending for the frame to be locked up parallel to the building, I think with their proximity to the pedestrian realm, to the walkway, there's a chance that a bike body is going to extend out into the sidewalk. And I think that if there is a better location for them, it's over in that, little area where right now you show benches, you show planters. I'd almost rather relocate them there, somewhere in there, rather than have them so close to where people are going to be walking. I think with Ricky's, it's a little bit different because they're kind of tucked almost right in the corner of the adjacent building. So they're a little bit out of the way where people aren't going to be necessarily walking by as close.
I do sit 4 feet back further than TK's.
Yeah, okay. Well, then that's definitely a consideration, but I still think the ideal location would probably be closer to where you have the
So-
ramp and the benches and the planting area
Right.
that you show.
Right. So some of this is kind of hard to work out until actually the physical parts are kind of laid around to see if they work. So it's rather difficult to, that's what we've been struggling with here, is to show you a firm plan as to what's going to be there. And then when we go to put the things in there, it doesn't quite work out. And then we're going to tear everything out and move things around. I'd rather just kind of try a few things out with temporary. None of the things I plan to put in there, planters, benches, what I was planning to permanently mount them into the asphalt. They're just going to be very heavy and not movable. Or something similar to the way the furniture is set up in the alleyway between the sewing center and the gelato place. That's just deck furniture that's been sitting there and can be moved around.
Yeah, but we can't give you a try it out approval. You know, like that puts us in a bad spot. Then like what, like, so if I don't like it in a month from now, I come down, knock on your door, like, hey, pack that up and come back to planning board.
Well, I don't want to put in permanent fixtures.
So you
I
weren't,
just want to put in some planters and some benches, and we'll move them around.
you weren't intending to anchor the benches or the
No.
bike racks at all?
The bike racks
The
would
bike
have to
racks
be
you wouldn't?
anchored.
Okay, but the benches and the planters you weren't intending to
No.
anchor?
Not at all.
Okay. I mean, with street furniture, my preference is to have it be as anchored as possible so that it can't be moved. But I'll certainly allow my fellow board members to comment on that as well. As far as the ramp goes, you mentioned, did you say Trex or some sort of similar material for, and wood? Have you explored or had you explored concrete at all and looked into what that might entail, concrete and metal combination or something like that? From my perspective, having something that's really as durable as possible and as permanent as possible, I think is preferable, but I just wanted to know if you'd looked at that at all.
I ruled that out early on as prohibitively expensive. Now, I did not get a quote on it, but it's not a hard thing to imagine that's going to cost a lot more than a wood ramp.
Okay. And the ramp itself, you said would be more Trex or some sort of composite material, more like that.
Composite. It will not be.
It won't be wood.
No.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question about that? I'm quickly reading the project notes, and I see a lot of pressure-treated wood decking, composite plastic joint spacing, composite plastic decking meeting the requirements of may be used. So the drawing seems to indicate that it's pressure-treated. And that
I think-
composite may be used. So are
I
you
think he
saying?
left it as he did not, I think he indicated it could be either. And so if there's a preference by the planning board, we can make a note.
Okay,
My preferences would be to use non-wood because it's less to maintain and there's not that much square footage that it's a cost factor.
If I can speak quickly to the material, so in terms of, I would definitely prefer Trex over any kind of wood product, just because I think wood makes it look a little more residential per se. I think the Trex could be better in terms of maintenance, snow removal, etc. And if I can suggest two things, maybe think more about what the railing material would be to make it look more commercial rather than residential. So the posts are not like some hefty wooden post, but it could be really made in a way that would be a little more modern, a little more commercial looking instead of residential. And my second kind of suggestion is, I know that you're looking at putting skirting, at least that's just what the drawings are showing.
Yes.
I think that's a good idea for sure, to keep like leaves and garbage from gathering underneath it. Just in terms of what material you are using to kind of, are you imagining like the same
There's a frame.
residential
There'd be
looking
it's a
skirting?
lattice. It's a vinyl lattice.
Yeah, I'm just trying to imagine how this kind of a residential ramp will look along a commercial building. And an ideal world, right? I would like
It's a
to
residential building that's been repurposed.
Correct. I think that it could, the material could be rethought a little bit. Maybe you use the Trex siding on the side instead of just lettuce work, to make it look a little more of a commercial ramp. That's my 2 cents on the ramp. Otherwise, the location, I don't have any problems with. Yeah, that works.
Well, at a minimum, I would like to validate the location of the ramp so that I can stripe the parking lot, because I've been holding off on striping the parking lot until that gets ironed out, and it's chaos in the parking lot during events. So it'd be good to get that striped.
I think we all agree that the location of the ramp is okay. I think it's actually good to have it right, the entrance right at the front of it. I think that's why it's kind of becoming a predominant feature, because it is like right up front on the building. It is what people will see when they kind of go down the street. So I just want to make sure that the aesthetic of the ramps are thought through, because it is a kind of a predominant feature now on the side of the building. All right, that's it for the ramp from my side. Anyone else?
Now that we've sort of talked through this, I agree. I like the ramp. Good placement. I understand, I believe, the intent behind having the movable planters, especially with the Plan B during wintertime, to shift them out or shift them so that you can do, rather easy snow clearing, especially in that little area. I mean, a lot of action was sort of being proposed in that gathering space, and that's tough, especially as we're also thinking that that's also needs to be an accessible area, because that's where your accessible space is going. You want to make sure you have your clearances there. So I think simplifying that is sometimes the best way to approach it. So I think the more simple approach there, I think, is the more prudent approach. And in that same vein, I think the bike racks, you're saying to keep them on the lift bridge side, correct? In front of on the sidewalk there, or move them closer to the parking lot?
My original intent was to put them in front of the building, but it sounds like there's concern that there's not going to be enough. It's going to crowd the walkway. I'm not sure where they could go. That sitting area isn't that big.
No.
Bikes take up a lot of space.
No, it will.
So it could be a bike rack all by itself and have no sitting space. I'm not married to the idea of the sitting space. That was something that I think the planning board at the last meeting, the original meeting, felt was useful to have.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just want to bring to your attention, this was what was approved, and the bike rack was located in the quote-unquote sitting area.
Yeah, that was before an ADA ramp was required.
Right.
And then once the ADA ramp went in, that pretty much went out the window.
Well, I think that area is about 16 by 18, so you may be able to put something there, but it would be reduced in size.
Yeah, the concern is people pull in from the right, from Lift Bridge Lane, it's a heavy turn.
Yeah, you still need to have the turning.
Yeah, the turning route, and I drive an extended length truck, and I pull in there every day.
My concern exactly is if you put too much pressure there, you're going to have it's going to be too complex to make a complex maneuver, like trying to fit in a larger vehicle.
I have delivery vehicles that come in
Correct.
sometimes.
Correct, and then what you're doing is you're creating an obstruction, and if anybody is trying to pull in afterwards, now you're spilling back out onto Lift Bridge. That's not a condition that I'm interested in. So
And the planters were there to basically protect anybody sitting in a bench.
yeah, the more we're talking about it, I see merit having the bike racks along the sidewalk pushed back far enough on the building's face. I've looked at numerous different bike rack styles, and there are those that you can clearly put in some sort of barrier material. If you look at in the city of
I've-
Buffalo,
Well, I've already purchased the bike racks. It's the inverted U. I have found that
correct.
those are the easiest to use and to locate.
you put it far enough back, you're gonna get you could get one bike on one side of it so that you're not, if you sighted it too far, too close to the sidewalk, then I think you would get the people that are gonna
Right.
be using it to put their front wheel directly into it and spill back onto the sidewalk. But I think if you sight it close enough to the building, you're forcing people to have to park their bike parallel to the sidewalk. And anybody that doesn't, that's something that can be addressed at the time. Bikes are not a permanent feature. Yes, the bike rack is, but the bike certainly isn't, and it can be moved around as needed.
Well, as it is, people lock them up to the telephone pole and to street signs
So-
on the sidewalk.
Can I
So-
ask, oh, I'm sorry, Blair.
Yeah, go.
Can I ask some questions then? Do you envision anything for the area that was previously approved as a sitting area or?
With the ramp there now, you could do whatever, you can fit in whatever you want in there. But I think it goes back to, you make it, if you try to wedge too many things going on in that little space, you can create, you're trying to put a lot of different modes into one little area. And the more we're talking about it, the more we're thinking about it. I'm concerned about making that a significant gathering space right next to an entrance, right next to a vehicular entrance. I think, as we mentioned, they don't have to gather here. They don't have to gather in a parking lot. A parking lot, as long as there's safe access, walkable access to a ramp, especially there, you have to have a clearance zone for the accessible space. And that's gonna have to be, I think, a minimum of 6 feet on the,
It's 8.
okay?
Yep.
There you go.
Would you still
So-
put planters there to?
I would do the planters as a screening,
Okay.
but I'm becoming less inclined to encourage walking traffic, biking traffic, car traffic in one little area.
Yeah, the more you talk about it, David, and one of my initial concerns, and this was addressed, but at a previous meeting, was how the ramp, if it was going to be positioned on the front of the building before you went to the back and then you went back to the front, how it was going to interact with the vehicle traffic. And I think that area right there, the more activity that you put in there, like David said, the greater the increase for a potential conflict. So I'm kind of leaning. I might be fully with you now, David. I think having some planters there for screening, or a planter, maybe one large one to just screen, and leave the bike racks where they are. Because you're right, with TKs being far out, I think that does actually have a significant factor that I didn't take into account before. So with that overlap there and being able to almost tuck them in a little bit more, they're going to be more out of the way from the pedestrian realm.
All you need is 4 feet of clearance.
Right.
And you have that.
Yeah.
I'm sure you will have that.
So
Well, there's 2 full 4-foot
Correct.
sidewalk blocks.
right. So I'm kind of more. I'm thinking that use that area entirely and primarily for screening, not for any gathering, not for any benches, not for anything like that, just to add some aesthetic value and also some actual physical structure there, to better define the space and better define the ingress for vehicles.
The other thing too is that you're also, you're gonna need to leave a 4-foot space between that little space and somebody in a wheelchair to get
For the
around,
ramp, yeah, so
to get to the ramp. You're not forcing
there
them
has to be a
go out the
4-foot
driveway.
path from the loading zone to
Correct.
the front of the ramp.
Correct.
And it can't be the driveway.
Correct. I'm not doing that.
Could it be maybe a 10-foot long planter that's up against the sidewalk and positioned so that there's enough space for somebody that would be using that ramp to traverse? So if it's right up against, I love how you've got the pointer moving. If it's right up against the sidewalk, that provides the screening. It also
Well, the screen
provides.
has to be along the driveway.
I think the
parallel to the driveway.
I think this more appropriate place for that screening, and this is my opinion, not the board's. If I'm a pedestrian and I'm walking, maybe it's an angled, maybe it's an L-shaped,
You could do an L shape for
Planter.
sure, but
because you bring up an interesting point of having it the drive aisle. I was thinking in terms of having it be parallel to the street.
Yeah,
So
when
it's
I
providing
pull
screening
in
for the
there,
pedestrian.
I can't, because of the way that, unless I'm going over the curb, I can't even get up to the side that's along the sidewalk. It's somebody pulling in and pulling too wide, and that's gonna be strictly from the sidewalk going down along the parking spaces.
Okay,
That's the biggest concern that I find when I pull in there. If sometimes people park there, and it's kind of hard even just to pull in because they parked in that area.
yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So if I can kind of add my 2 cents into it, and I appreciate like all the thoughts that go into the location of the bike racks. My only concern locating them in front of the building is that now you're kind of blocking your pedestrian traffic from your storefront, right? And I feel like you put so much effort and money in this beautiful storefront, and so people can walk by it and window shop, and it draws you in. But now you have a bike rack between the pedestrian and kind of, the inside of the building, or for them to
Right.
be drawn into the building through these great big windows that you
And the
have.
original thought was to have a bench along that, just underneath the windows, just facing out towards the street. That's why the bike racks were down in there in the sitting area. If that sitting area can be reduced and then
So
put more of a focus on bikes, then,
my opinion is that,
or we just forget bike racks.
yeah, I feel like nobody's really going to sit in that sitting area.
I don't know how
And
many
nobody's
people
hanging
would.
out at the corner of the parking lot. It's all paved with a couple planters. In my opinion, I would get rid of the sitting area and put some bike parking in there instead. With some planters,
so planters and bike parking.
yes.
Would you do bike parking that was parallel, so the U-shaped, that the applicant mentioned, up against the sidewalk, and then have a planter behind that? Or how would you orient that?
So I have a plan where I did 3 U-shaped, basically perpendicular to the sidewalk, but walking towards the building, with 3 feet between them, which is pretty typical, so you could fit bikes on either side of the U. Basically, if you show the drawing that had the bikes on them, the bikes would be in exactly the same orientation, but it's not one of those racks with all the multiple slots in it, which everybody hates because all it does is break the front tires. It'd just be 3 perpendicular U's right along that sidewalk. And so the access is coming along the sidewalk and pulling into the U shape. And that would not encroach on the access loading and unloading zone, because there's plenty of space before that.
And a person would be able to get around it safely to access that ramp. as
They would
well.
end long before the 4 feet gap that would be needed along the ramp. So it's 8 foot from the building. So between that 8 foot from the building and the entrance to the driveway is where the 3 U's would be.
And they would be spaced 3 feet apart?
I've seen, the recommendations I've seen is about 3 feet apart.
Okay, because I'm not even talking about your microphone, because when I was out there, I measured about 18 feet. So that would, if each one is 3 feet apart, that's 9 feet, right? And then 8 feet from the building,
Okay,
that's
4 for the-
17 feet.
4 for the ramp, 4 for
Yeah.
access.
I drew this sketch. So these being the U-shaped bike and then an L-shaped planter. Is that something that,
I I'm okay with that. I think that, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I'll speak for myself here. I think that it would be preferable to have the bike racks in that configuration there, and that orientation perpendicular rather than where you have them in front of the window. I also think you could get more, 3 instead of 2 that you show there.
Right, and then you could fit 6 bikes easily.
Yeah.
Sometimes they stack them if they're together, they'll both put their bikes on one side.
Yeah, I mean, I like that quick sketch you did there, and I like the L as well.
I didn't go to architecture school, I'm not an artist, so if anybody can see this live on TV, it's not the best.
You're
but it
telling me that's not to
communicates.
scale?
It is not to scale, but I think, we discussed, as I mentioned, there's 18 feet between the building and the drive aisle, and so the applicant has stated that there would be 3 feet between each one of those U-shaped bike racks, and then a total of 8 feet for the ramp, and then an area to actually traverse. So we've got 17 feet, so we've got a foot to spare.
Leave it alone.
Well,
I kid.
It's a clear zone.
on the new plan, he shows 19 parking spots.
Yep, that's
On
what I was
the
just going to get to.
original,
Go for it, Joe.
There was 20, and we did give him a waiver last time.
Well, keep in mind what happened is that you did request that one of those spaces at the back of the building become accessible, so that occurred.
So the back corner of the back building, there appears to be a line that's drawn parallel to the building back there. Here.
Yeah,
And that's not parking space.
It is.
That is a parking space?
yeah, because it blocks the entrance. There's a driveway there.
Is that the driveway that exits onto Water Street?
Yep.
Okay.
You cannot park a car in that last spot perpendicular to the building, or it
Gotcha.
completely blocks the driveway.
So that's actually 2 spaces then that are coming in from that way?
Right, so I rotated it so I could at least get one vehicle in there.
Okay, I see.
Sorry.
Where do you have them counted somewhere? No, the yellow one. So that would actually be 20 then, Joe.
Are you talking about blocking the back driveway?
The driveway that goes to Water
The
Street.
one that exits onto Water Street. So this actually would be 20, this one right here.
Okay.
So it looks like it's 20 spaces just reconfigured to accommodate for the loading space, for the handicap accessible, and for the ingress egress from Water Street.
Correct.
Okay.
I feel like we've made a lot of progress on the conversation about the former sitting area. So 3 U-shaped. Do we want to say that the planter, do you want to be specific with the size of the planter, or do you want to say just a planter should go there? How do you want to handle that?
I'm going to be looking for a prefabricated planter, so I'd rather not build a custom planter. So if maybe you can describe it in terms of enough to provide protection on the driveway side and enough to provide a separation between the bike rack and the handicap accessible space.
And can you also specify kind of the height of it, or is that?
Like I said, I'm going to be looking for something off the shelf.
So and Jill, maybe this is a question for you. If we, could we give not a range, but like an up to, X feet by X feet by X feet high?
Yes. And I can
And
also,
you can come as close as you can to that.
and I can also do a better job with this drawing, and you can say this is the location where we would like to see
Right.
planters, and then say a minimum height of, or a maximum height,
Yep.
however you want to handle that. And so then the applicant would put the planters within this box, and at a maximum height.
Gotcha.
That provides a little bit of flexibility for the applicant, so it's not something that maybe is made to own.
So when we were talking about the bike racks, we were talking about 17 feet total for the space that the bike racks would be.
9 feet where the bike rack would be, 8 feet to
Yes,
accommodate.
sorry, including the 8 feet that's accommodation space, 9 feet for the bike racks.
Yep,
If we wanted to extend for that space for the planter, could we just match it so that it's,
to say 9 feet and maybe 3 feet, because you have to, that accessible.
nine by like 3 and
9
then
by
by
3.
like 3 high?
Yeah. That would be the landscape space.
Yes.
Yep, and whatever the applicant would put in there, as long as it's providing that screening.
Yeah, and I would say, up, whatever you can come closest to in prefab for that, I'm okay with that, as long as it is the intent is to screen, and it does that to the extent that you can.
Okay. So I think we've got that sorted out, that it will no longer be a parking area. It will accommodate the loading zone, the accessible space, which would be a minimum of 8 feet. And then you'll have that bike rack area. So I think that will be sufficient. Do you want to start talking? And because I realize that nobody's here, but we do have to ask if there's people that would like to comment in support or opposition, and then acknowledge that nobody's here. So I'll do that. Anyone wishing to speak in support? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? We have no one present for this meeting other than the applicant and the board members. So do we want to move on then to talk about, I think the next item of concern was the windows, the plexiglass.
I can start. So I don't think that, the windows per se are necessary at that location. I understand, there's not a great big open room behind them. It hides a circulation stairway and corridor. Would it look nice if we could see a corner storefront? It would. But I would rather, I'm not sure the plexiglass sandwiched against an exterior finish with some trim will look that great. I feel like there is still going to be condensations happening between, and I would almost, I'm actually fine with it being left alone. My kind of suggestion or concern was that now you almost see kind of a blank wall in front of you instead of where the windows would be. And I'm wondering if maybe painting the bottom portion of the building would help. I know your renderings show.
Well, the ramp will be along there.
There will be. But in general, I think it would help the building and help that corner if there was some kind of a separation between like the base of the building and the top. And I'm wondering if you are still planning to paint the building, or if you're
No.
going just
The plan is to leave it the white the way it is now.
just because I foresee at least the bottom portion of the building getting dirty pretty fast, especially with snow removal and salting and all of that. I think that could kind of solve
Well, the
problem,
vinyl,
putting a little darker.
the vinyl
base.
actually does a pretty good job of shedding, a lot better than a painted surface. We found that even when they re-poured the concrete, they splashed it up on the building, and you can just wipe it off with your finger. Nothing sticks to the vinyl, including paint, which is one of the reasons we're not painting. So far, it hasn't been an issue. That was my original concern and why we were originally thinking about painting in a dark color. But since it's been up for several months now, there's been very little issues, and everybody liked it white, so we decided to try to keep it white.
I feel like the first winter is going to be the true test to this.
Well,
But
I won't be changing much before winter, so.
Well, that would be my only suggestion, is making it a darker color at the base of it. And even if you think about putting some kind of a mural in that location instead of the plexiglass, I think it would also,
I kind of wanted it to be sort of a creative space. That's the main reason for the window was just basically to protect anything that was put on there. But that's not necessarily a requirement, depending on how whatever's put up there is, if it's made of a material that can survive exposure to the elements. I like the idea of murals. You know, that could be something that changes over time, and I'm sure the bookstore would be very interested in talking to people about that too.
Keep in mind that a mural is not signage, so it wouldn't require any additional approvals.
Really?
Yes.
Can my whole building be a mural?
If you wanted it to, as long as it doesn't advertise the
In the
uses, the uses that are in there.
Okay.
So you can have lots of artwork, as long as it's not describing. So let's say that you had a cookie company in the back building, and you decided to paint cookies all over the building. That could be inferred to be advertising and be signage.
Okay.
But if you painted mermaids all over it for the cookie company, not signage.
Good to know.
I would recommend a glass of milk, and that's a good compliment. So,
anyone else has an opinion on that plexiglass?
I'm going to echo both my fellow board members and say I actually prefer it the way it is now than to have plexiglass there, even if it was blank. Yeah, it would be great to have, you know, kind of a darker accent at the bottom for all the reasons that Yana specified, but really I think just the blankness is better than the plexiglass, in my opinion.
Anything else on that? Okay. So let's move on to the ramp.
Can we go over the materials just one more time? I'm sorry to beat this to death here. I've got wood frame, concrete foundations. Then they talk about a PVC railing system, decking of owner's choice, but you indicated you would do some kind of a Trex or composite material. Okay. Then they show a metal that would wrap the posts, and I assume the header as well there. Then a new metal roof with flashing over the rear door. And at the bottom, some kind of skirting and PVC trim. Is all that accurate? Right?
It is.
Colors?
So I'm not much for colors besides white, gray, and black. And so in staying with the theme of the building, which is white and black, I thought maybe a black railing would look good. Even though the existing siding for the back half of the building is sort of a tan color. And I think black would go fine with that also. With white for any of the support posts for the roof in the back and for the soffit.
Okay.
And it'd be the same metal for the roof in the back that was used in the front.
Exactly what I was thinking. Okay.
But it has to come out further to cover that deck, and so it has to go up a little bit higher to have the same pitch.
I have a question for the board, because we do have a lot of design professionals on this, and also for the applicant. I heard a lot of different materials, and the drawing states a lot of different materials. Is it possible to have the entire accessible ramp be a Trex material? And if so, is that the direction that you'd want to go? So that we have all the same material?
Excluding the
Railings and-
structural components? Is that what
Yes.
you're-
Structural cannot be Trex.
Excluding the structural components.
Well, it seems like he's already there. I mean, whether you say PVC or composite, it's all generally
Right.
the same type of product. I mean, you buy, like, it is different, don't get me wrong, but it's plastic-based. And you would buy, I would think you would buy all of that railing and everything as a system pre-manufactured, and you're plopping it in, essentially. Yeah, so you would typically buy the casing that would go over the columns, and then everything clips
Exactly.
together, same with the railings, all that. So, yeah. I mean, do you have a manufacturer that you like or something? Is like Trex okay, or?
Actually, it's typically whatever I can find source at the local stores.
Sure.
Typically is what I focus on. And there's a lot available. in
So
that
then more
realm.
appropriate to say a composite rather than a brand.
Yes. It's a Xerox thing again. Trex is kind of used universally to refer to composite.
So, and then
Materials.
you're looking at black from tip to tail on
Yes.
that railing and everything, okay. Same with the screening and all that, trim on that, I'm talking about the rail,
The skirting,
the skirting, yes, and the
Skirting I
trim
planned on
on the
white.
ramp. The
White.
skirting would be white, and the trim around the skirting would be black or white, I'm just,
I'm thinking white. Because it's just going to be flat boards that are holding the skirting, or that kind of cover the skirting. So black's going to be the railings, the vertical and horizontal railings.
right, so you'll have kind of a white band all the way around the bottom of the building
Yes.
then, okay. I see where you're going here.
Yana had mentioned about the skirting being the lattice, giving more of a residential feel than a commercial feel. Do you want anything different with that as a board?
I mean, I have seen, instead of lattice work, like, applying vertical decking on the side of it would maybe look a little better than just lattice work on the side. Kind of bringing it over.
The same
What do you
boards, the same type of boards that would be used for the decking.
I have
To
seen
do
that
them
used
vertically?
on to cover up like decks and ramps. I think it might look a little better than just the flimsy residential kind of a grid pattern.
Mhm.
Horizontal or vertical?
Probably vertical. I think horizontal. Yeah, probably vertical at the ramp locations, right? Because the horizontal would just be cut every so often. I think it would look cleaner than putting like a framed lettuce work in there.
Something
Just
more
a cleaner
solid.
look, yeah, something more solid. I think it'll look nice. It'll look nicer.
Right?
Would you
Yeah.
continue to want that to be two different colors, or would you want it, the entire ramp to be black?
I feel like it would look better if it was black on the bottom. My personal aesthetic
Mm-hmm.
opinion.
Well, I'm
just
thinking
because
it also
would
could be
kind of
easier
cover-
material-wise.
Yeah.
Well, there's also like a T111 type material. It's sort of a grooved panel. And it comes pre-finished, you still paint it to whatever color you want, but it could be cut and placed easily and it provides a vertical groove every like 5 inches or something like that.
So
A
T1,
lot more
sorry.
affordable than full-size deck planking, which is going to be, 5/8. It's going to be about 4 times more expensive than a panel.
So
per square
this is
foot.
showing PVC trim on all those, on that structural, I don't know, what's it, a 2x8 along the base on the asphalt side? So if the applicant is looking to keep that natural PVC color, because it does have some components that make things hard to stick to it, then maybe, just consideration here, that the whole thing should just remain white then. And, put the PVC trim on all those structural components, because you're gonna see the whatever, the 4x4, 6x6, whatever structural component, you're gonna see that down, and the skirting would go in between that. So wrap that with PVC on the 3 sides, you'll see skirting in between it, but have all the PVC be white then, and then the skirting would, typically match.
No, I agree 100%. I was not thinking that the trim will actually remain.
And I'm just
But
going
if there's,
off what
if there's a white trim, then yes, I would make whatever paneling goes in there white. I think my picture was that, there would not be it would not be framed. It would just be kind of the tracks going along the whole length of the ramp.
You created the same picture for me.
Yeah, and that's.
But
'cause I
if there's
was looking
frames,
at-
then yes, I agree with you.
Because that's how it's
100%.
shown, is like the frames here.
Okay, so then
know.
white for the entire.
I'm just saying how it's
Yeah,
shown.
if there's
I'm-
panels
Yep.
and trim, if the trim remains, then the panel inside that trim, if there's a panel, a grooved panel that you decide to go with, should be also white. I wouldn't make that
So,
black.
yeah, so let's go with the drawing as proposed. As far as the skirting, are you okay with T111, which is plywood, to be in that space surrounded by the PVC trim?
Are we
Rather
talking
than the
about the
lattice.
skirting?
Yep, we're talking about,
Oh, well, I don't think you could. You gotta have something that's a little bit more.
It would have a frame behind it. So this is a 3/8 inch thick product.
Yeah, but it would look solid, is that what?
Oh, yeah, it's a solid, it comes in 4x8 sheets. But it's an engineered product.
So it's not plywood.
It's got a hard surface on the top, but it's plywood behind it.
Oh,
So it's got like a
Okay.
textured finish on it, and
That's
it
a
has
composite,
has
okay.
grooves.
So it is a composite material.
I mean,
It's
I think
similar
I
to,
would rather
it's-
just see normal skirting, like it's just, it's simpler, it's gonna be cheaper. You just get the PVC skirting, you cut it, you shove it in there, you're kinda done. And
Well-
it comes white.
then there's another product, so like a soffit material, where it comes in like 4x8, 12-foot long strips. And you could do that vertically, just like I'm doing the soffits. And the soffits are gonna be going underneath the awning. You could do the same material, basically goes on top of a frame.
Is that like the beadboard looking?
Yeah, well, look at any soffit that's non-vented, where it doesn't have the perforations.
Okay, so it would just be a panel soffit then, and,
Yeah. It'd be built in strips, but they'll be vertical, it looked like vertical boards, essentially. But it's a white, yeah.
Okay, so white though? Okay.
Yeah, I think white, if you go that way, for
Right.
sure.
All right, so
But
that
I'd
would be
almost
like a
prefer that option.
composite, like hardy type material. What did you call it? Help me
It's
out.
soffit material, it's actually a vinyl product.
Okay, vinyl
it's-
soffit
yeah.
material, there we go, okay.
okay, so, and keep in mind too that the applicant still has to install the wheel stops, because immediately I thought, oh gosh, what if cars are crashing into this and we've got a thin material for the soffit, but those wheel stops will provide that.
Right.
That's safety. So, I know I'm asking this question over and over again. The color of the ramp, white,
Black.
black.
Railings, black,
Railings black,
skirting, white.
skirting white, yep, okay.
Hold on.
Decking is gonna be sort of a gray color.
Decking black.
She can't write that.
No, decking,
to repeat it so I understand, because I'm putting the picture together.
What color is the decking?
I'm thinking like a gray, color.
Just keep in mind, guys, that the color does change the price too. So, yeah, gray would be sufficient here.
Well, I didn't want black because people walking over black leaves footprints. And I didn't want a super light color, so I want something in a mid-range,
A neutral,
a neutral color, grayish. Not a brown or other type of typical decking color.
Are there too many colors in a small area?
Just thinking that.
Only
I-
three, white, black, and gray.
As I was repeating it to myself, I was getting confused.
Is it,
I was waiting for David to add on to what he was saying there. He kind of,
no, I finished it. I just want to make sure that, we've got to be cognizant of what colors we ask for, because that also does change the unit price.
because I've never purchased composite material, is white the, I won't say cheapest, the most affordable?
You're pretty limited with, white.
I don't know that
is
white's
usually
even
not
available for a decking.
Okay, okay,
Yeah, it's usually more on the natural spectrum.
okay.
It won't be excessively dark or excessively light. It'll be in the mid-range colors.
Yeah.
Yeah, are we okay just saying accommodate, because that's why I was repeating it all to myself, because I'm confused, I'm trying to picture it in my head, and it does sound like we're talking about a lot of colors for a small space and a small amount of area here. Are we okay just, saying combination of white, black, and gray? I mean, that's what he's looking to do anyways.
Well, let me ask you this, would you want the railings to be gray with the decking to be gray, and then have the white for the skirting and the,
The railings are only gonna come
E-
in three colors: brown, white, and black.
Yeah,
oh, they
and
don't
I
come
think,
in?
and I think
Okay.
black.
I see, I am learning a
if-
lot here.
If we're gonna specify color anywhere for preference, I would say that black railings.
Okay,
And then, everything else, a combination of,
no, I think we had it. I think everything from the skirting
I have
up
skirting
was
white.
black, skirting down is white, and gray for the ramp. And is there any objection to that? And then
Okay.
that makes it easy for,
I just wanna
Jill,
capture this.
right?
Skirting
No.
and trim white, railings black, decking gray.
Because the gray would be comparable to a concrete mix, so.
and not to beat this to death, the columns for the new metal roof shown 6x6 pressure treated wrapped with metal. What are you thinking there?
Yeah, so that coiled metal usually comes white, brown, and black also. So I'm thinking black for all the vertical supports, because that's what I was thinking on the railings too. All the vertical stuff is black, horizontal stuff is white. And then the roof on that obviously would be black, like the current roof.
Okay, this shows gutters.
Yeah, so the architect felt that there should be gutters on that awning that goes over the ramp, because it doesn't quite extend out beyond the ramp. So all of the water and snow runoff would land on the ramp and build up on that.
So that gutter would start at the corner and just come along that facade of the building?
Yeah, just along the west side.
And what color were you thinking for that?
It'll be black, the same as the roof, so it'll just blend right in.
I think I got it all.
So the post will be wrapped in black metal, is that what I heard? And a black colored metal?
Correct.
Even the horizontal part, because it almost, it's a frame, right, that is kind of goes like vertical, then there's a horizontal member, and then a vertical member down.
Yes.
I wouldn't, are you thinking you would make the horizontal member white?
No, that'd be, the fascia,
Black, yes,
the fascia
it
would be
just a
black, the same as the awning.
Okay, okay. I think that'll-
Okay.
I think we beat that to death. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want me to read it back to you?
Yes, please.
The railings are gonna be black, the skirting and trim white, decking gray. To specify the addition of the gutter will be black. The, new metal roof, black. And black colored metal, will wrap, the posts. Okay. That's a condition.
Yeah, yes.
Then we have, you've determined that the windows are not necessary, so that's also a condition because that wasn't proposed. So on condition that, the facade of the west side where windows were proposed remain as constructed with no windows.
Yes.
With no plexiglass.
No windows and no plexiglass. And then I will create a, graphic showing our area with planters to appear in a space that is 9 by 3 by 3. Planters of the applicant's choosing. So, the motion would be to amend final site plan approval dated October 2nd, 2023 on the conditions that were just detailed.
Can I get a motion to
I
approve
move.
on the,
Second?
everyone in favor?
I
Aye.
Okay,
You're good to go.
all set?
I'll write
All
it
right.
up.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Oh, like a second?
Everyone in
I had to get
favor?
first on that.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.